What up, everybody? Welcome to Minorly Important, the podcast where we talk about minor league sports. I'm your host, Kevin Marlowe. I'm joined here with my co-host here, Dylan. How you doing tonight, man?
Oh man, I'm doing good. Fighting a flu that's been going around the house. So other than that, can't complain.
Awesome. And then we got Ryan Baker. Ryan, what's up?
Hey Kevin, I'm doing all right tonight. It's another fine winter night here as we got the some hockey games going on.
Mm-hmm.
Just enjoying the time at home.
Awesome. All right. And then we're also joined by James Franke. James, how you doing?
I'm doing not too bad. How about you?
I'm doing great. Can't complain. Like Ryan, it's a little cold out, but enjoying the Four Nations going on. So that's fun.
Hockey weather.
Yep, exactly. And then we're also joined by Colin. Colin, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for asking. I'm pretty excited to spend Valentine's Day.
Way past that day, bud.
Yeah, I know. With my wife, it'll be our first Valentine's Day together married, so I'm pretty excited.
Oh yeah.
Oh, congratulations!
Well, congratulations.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, and then tonight,
only downhill from here.
That's what they all say, but I'm not going to make that happen.
All right, and then tonight we are joined by a special guest, none other than the voice of the Fort Wayne Komets, Shane Albarani. Shane, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm glad I'm the special guest.
Well, thanks for
special one. Like it.
Well, we appreciate you hopping on tonight. Like I said, Shane is the radio voice of the Fort Wayne Komets. Shane's voice in the Fort Wayne area is well known. Everybody knows who Shane is. But Shane, let's start off. If you could give everybody a little bit of background of how you got into this, and what got you into minor league sports and stuff like that.
Oh, well, this is my 30th some year calling hockey. I started back when I was in high school at Northrop High School. My senior year, 1991-92, and been doing it ever since. So I started working with the Komets 28 years ago. That's hard to believe. I think James's dad, Michael, he was the one who brought me into the family, and here we are almost 30 years later. It's crazy that I'm still part of it, and I will be until I have to beat Bob Chase. So I got a long way to go. My goal. My goal is to make it to the Komets' 100th season, so we can say one franchise really only had two broadcasters in 100 years. I'll be 78 at the time, so it's a reason to take care of myself, is to get all the way to the 100th season.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's awesome. And you learned from Bob Chase, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Bob, yeah, I mean, he was second dad, grandpa to me, for many, many years. So, it was kind of something him and I talked about for years, and hopefully I was going to be the guy to be able to take over for him. And here I am. I was able to do it. So, it made us both very happy.
Awesome. Well, I will say that Bob Chase's shoes were hard to fill, but they couldn't have found a better voice to do it. And Shane, you do a fantastic job, and I'm sure I speak for everybody else on here. We all agree that I couldn't imagine anybody else taking over for the legend himself, Bob Chase. So,
it was something where, it was something that had been in the works, obviously, for years. And it was something where, Bob and I had an understanding where, Bob, you can do it as long as you want. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. I had opportunities in other markets, other teams, but I turned them down because it wasn't going to feel right. That's like I was the guy who was gonna follow Bob, and that was my destiny since I was 9 years old. That was my goal since I was a kid. So for me to go anywhere else would have just been wrong and never would have felt right. So the fact that I was able to follow Bob was a dream of little Shane, 9 years old, couldn't believe it, that it actually happened. No, Bob was a big mentor. He of course, introduced me to Doc Emmerich. Doc has been great over the years, and there's been other broadcasters here and there. But so I take a lot of inspiration from a few other broadcasters. Not very many. It's a very kind of a small group, but yeah, I'm so glad that I'm able to do this and do stuff like this. It's great that I get the invite, to come on and do stuff like this. I really love it.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you. I mean, like I said, Bob Chase is a legend, but you are too in the Fort Wayne community. So you grew up in Fort Wayne, correct? Like you said, you went
Yeah.
to North High School.
Yeah, Northrop High School. I've been a Komet fan since I was about 9 years old. When we started to go to Komet games regularly when I was a kid, I've got a lot of stories from running around the Coliseum. It's. I just think of the amount of time I've spent in that building over the past 40 years. It's crazy. I think a lot of my life was spent in those walls, and it's great when I go down by our dressing room and in that area because it hasn't changed, in 70 plus years, and it's all the thing that's changed is a coat of paint, and I just love that I get to walk through those doors every day, and I'm 9 years old every time I walk through those doors. It's
Awesome.
That's awesome.
What might
you
be
and me
one?
both.
yeah, James has been there since he was probably able to walk. So
Yeah.
Yep. Then Colin, Dylan, and I mean, we've spent when the Komets aren't in town, we were having a home game for the Mad Ants. So I mean, it's the Coliseum is certainly a staple of Fort Wayne, and I can't imagine the Komets playing in any different stadium. I mean, it's just a classic place. What's one of your favorite memories from working with Bob?
we got to work games together. It was a lot of fun, but it was just him and I just talking before games. We would just sit there and just really talk about anything. When my daughter started coming to games, she was turned into another one of his grandchildren. So we had a lot of fun, just talking. When he got ill there towards the end, I spent a lot of time with him in the hospital, and we really shared a lot of good moments there. In his final days. So that's something that I'll always cherish, is being able to be with Bob there in the last moments of his life.
Oh, that's awesome. For a lot of people that may not be listening in the Fort Wayne area, Bob Chase was a legend here in Fort Wayne. He was the original voice of the Komets, and took the whole radio rink side thing and ran with it and just brought Komets games to life. And Shane, like I said earlier, I couldn't imagine somebody else that would have to take his place. So, what? So is it going to Komets games that young? Is that what got you into minor league sports and all of that?
Oh yeah, that's yeah. I would go with my sister. Usually, my sister actually was a hockey fan before I was. She was a little older than me, so she would go to games with her friends. She's like in middle school, maybe freshman, sophomore in high school. And fortunately, mom said, "Hey, you got to take your annoying little brother with you." So that's how I kind of fell in love with the game, and I was the annoying little brother, the hanger on. So that's how I fell in love with Komet hockey. And I've got, I don't keep a whole lot of memorabilia, but like the stuff when I was like 9, 10, 11, 12 year olds, I still have it. It still sits in my office, and it's great. I actually, got a jersey from Dan Sancartier, who was one of my first guys who I really loved with the Komets, and Wayne Bishop, a fan, actually gifted me one of his jerseys.
Wow.
Story that he was one of my favorite players. So I actually got 2 of those jerseys from the 83-84 season, or the 82-83 season, now in my possession. So it's really, really cool that I have those things now. But no, I mean, I look at those things from, from the mid 80s, early to mid 80s, and I just still adore it. And that's the stuff that brought me to Komet hockey, and it's a lot of things that people just kind of don't understand unless you're as old as I am. So
That's awesome. What's one of your favorite moments as the broadcaster for them? What's one of your favorite moments that you can tell us?
Winning a cup, you can't get much better than that. That entire playoff series, it was COVID, something that's, obviously, fingers crossed, never happens again. But that whole run with that team, because we were locked basically up together, we were, it's
unbelievable.
So we only had each other. And then, to go on the road and play all these games in weird locations and traveling, the travel was crazy. I remember from Memorial Day to 4th of July. You're playing hockey in the middle of summer, basically. And I think we may have been home like 7 or 8 days that entire time. We were constantly moving around. And so to win a cup, under those circumstances and with those guys was just amazing, because every game throughout those playoffs were so good. We're so good. So I think I could pick 3 or 4 games out of that playoff series. The game that to be honest with you, may have been the greatest comeback in Komet history. The game 2 out in Allen. When we're down. Yep. We're down 4-1, I think, in the first period, and came back to win this game in overtime. I'm still kind of marveled at that game. And since it wasn't at home, a lot of people, I think, kind of forget about that game. But really, if we look through the history book, it's the greatest comeback in Komet history, because if we don't win it, we don't win the cup. That was it. So that was just, again, winning the cup. But I go back to that team, and it was at 18 that we lost in Game 7 of the Western Conference Final. That was absolutely gut wrenching on my part. I think on all of our parts, but having to call that game and being just one bounce away from saying your team's going to the finals. Because when you're calling an overtime Game 7, or a deciding game like that, you got 2 calls in your head. You've got the exciting call that's going to send everyone to their feet, or you've got the call that's going to get everyone crying. So, you got them both in your head. So, you don't know which one you're going to be able to throw out there. So those moments like that, I always remember as well.
Yeah.
Those darn cup stealing Colorado Eagles.
That's right.
I was going to say, we were up 3-1 with 10 minutes to go.
Oh man, don't bring up that James, because I remember we scored with 8 minutes and 1 second left in the period. And I looked up at the clock. Sean Sidlowski had scored, and I looked up at the clock.
I was even later.
And I said, "That's too much time. We can't hold them off. There's no way." So we have to get another goal. It's like, if we don't get another goal, we're going to lose this game. In that moment, I had that thought, and sure enough,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, I think one of our players got a penalty for playing without a helmet.
Well, it was the one in the end was Dennis Kravchenko got called for a goaltender interference game-winning goal, which kind of a ticky-tack kind of move in that situation. But I go back to, I think, the first period, Trevor Cheek had a breakaway, and he didn't score. And I thought to myself, there's your game winner right there, that we're unable to score on that goal. And in games like that, you've seen so many games. I've watched so many games. I've called so many games. And you get a feeling. It's like, oh, that's not good. We didn't score there. Or, they didn't score there. It's like, all right, we're going to win this game tonight. So you you get those gut feelings that a lot of times comes over the air. I'll even say that. I'm like, all right, remember that one, because that's going to come back on us.
The comic killer during that series was definitely Michael Jolie.
Yeah, scored a hat trick in Game 1, and that was the difference. We lost 2 in overtime. We couldn't stop that one guy.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh. So you go on the road all the time with the team. What's your favorite stadium to call a game in other than the Coliseum?
My all-time favorite is Elmira. First arena in Elmira.
Really?
And
Elmira Jackals.
The Elmira Jackals. And Kalamazoo now is my favorite. It always has been, really, because those 2 buildings are very close to each other. They just don't the old time hockey barns just don't exist anymore, and that's why. That Wings Event Center has not changed since I was a kid, and we would go up to road games. It's the same coat of paint, it's the same chairs. The dust in the press box has been there since 1986. Same. And it's just the right amount of crappy, as I call it. Not right amount,
but crappy enough to feel nostalgic, right?
Yeah, right. It's just the right amount, so that's why I love it.
Awesome.
Well, we're only going to have a few more years left up there in that building. They're going to build a new building here in a couple of years.
Yeah, so we just need to cherish the last couple of years we have left.
Yeah.
all those old buildings are going to be gone. Our building is great. Obviously, it's still got the same bones from 1952, and I'm glad we still have that kind of nostalgia, especially in the lower level. But the inside has changed. It's expanded. The old wooden seats are gone. So it's changed a bit. But we still have that old hockey feel a little bit, at least when you walk around anyway. But there's not that. Those barns just don't exist anymore. So I love Wings Event Center.
Yeah,
Plus,
you got a couple of those wood seats in your office.
I think it's great.
Yeah. What was that, James?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was saying Shane's got a couple of those wood seats in his office.
I do. I got 3 of them up there. I managed to scam some of those when they started giving them away there at the Coliseum, and those are heavy. They're not as heavy as but I remember lugging them out to my car. Those were pretty heavy.
I remember as a kid when they raised the roof to put up the suite level and the 600 level, and I remember as a kid going, "Oh wow, that's awesome!" And but yeah, so what's it like on the road? Do you find that there are some stadiums where you get treated better and some where you don't? Like the fans, do you get warm hospitality in certain areas?
It's funny because I get the warmest greetings in our rivals barns. You think that, they're going to hate me because, we're the rival. But no, that's where it's warmest because we see each other so often. It's the barns you don't go to very, very often is where you may have some hostility towards you. I guess maybe it's just because it's not the familiarity. But there was some times in, Quad City, had some rough fans that turn around and would give it to me a little bit. Jacksonville, that I'm sure everyone has seen the brawl down in Jacksonville that happened there in 2019 or 2020. It was right before that was a great. The clearing there, and I had a lot of fans giving it to me that night, and I know Wichita during COVID because we played in the practice rink. I was literally right in the middle of all the fans, and there was a couple times like, all right, am I gonna have to swing to get myself out of here? This is gonna be a rough go here, but luckily did not. But there's been a few times like, oh man, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to throw down here to get out of this.
And some of those small barns, like when the Komets do something exciting, like win or score a goal, it has to be the coolest feeling in the world when you're almost the only person cheering for the Komets.
Oh, it's great. Well, last week in Toledo, we come back in the third period, tie it 3-3. We take a late penalty. And of course, in typical Toledo fashion, they thought they scored with 14 seconds left. But there was, as soon as the referee came out and said no goal, I'm the only one screaming no goal. So it was great.
Nice.
So Shane, obviously the hockey players, they have to practice to get better. What as a commentator, what do you have to do to help just build your skill and obviously get used to saying these names that aren't very common names?
You know what? For me, I'd say I'm kind of unusual, but then that also because I learned from Bob, and Bob's game prep was getting out his yellow legal pad and writing out the names phonetically. That was Bob's game prep. So I don't have a lot of charts and graphs. I look at younger broadcasters and they show me what they do, and they would. I had one young broadcaster says, "Hey, what do you use for your spotting boards?" And I'm like, "What is that? What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about." So I learned from Bob, and it's more of a feel. It's not so much knowing facts and numbers and all that stuff. You learn what's important to your audience and what the fans want to know. So that's what I kind of. That's what I know what I need to know. I know what the fans want to know what's going on. They don't want to hear a lot of facts and kind of things that they're not going to remember. They want to know the score and how we did in the fights. That's what it is. And that's what Bob taught me, and in 60 years of him calling hockey games, there wasn't a single Komet that lost a fight because it was Bob calling them, So, so that's what I learned from that. Yeah. So no, I mean, for me, like I said, I don't listen to a lot of broadcasts. I never really did because I wanted to be myself. I didn't want to sound like anyone else. So I don't really kind of
Your
pay
own
attention
thing.
to it very much, just kind of in the background. I obviously listen to Bob a lot and I have a lot of Bob-isms, but you know what? I can't sound like Doc. Doc is elegant. I'm not. I'm just some schmuck who's just out there calling hockey, so yeah, but I was a big wrestling fan growing up. So I actually on the Komets podcast, I was talking to Justin Taylor about this. I said, I think Jim Ross actually is probably my biggest influence. Him and Bob, Jim Ross during the Attitude Era, I absolutely adore. I mean, because I go out there and I call these games and I always say I'm telling a story. And with a story, you got to have heroes and villains. You got to have heels and baby faces. So that's why, I'm a homer, but I'm not disrespectful in a way, but trust me, the other team, you're a villain, and I told like AJ Jenks, I told him, I said, dude, I made you sound like to be the worst human being ever because I needed a villain, and I apologized to him when he came to play for us. Yeah. But it's entertainment. So if I'm not being entertaining, I'm not doing my job. And so whether that is calling the fights or calling the action on the ice, but, just laying out, just kind of stats and statistics that people don't remember. I don't think that's entertaining. So, my big thing is, you take the goalie fight, the Ryan Fanti fight. That was one of my proudest moments because it was absolutely viral, went crazy. And there was no thought process. It was just me being me, calling a fight, So I was like, there was no real skill involved. You can't really practice for that. But in that moment, I was just Shane the fan. I was just, I'm just the guy who had the microphone.
How shocked were you when Fanti started that fight?
It was just that surreal moment. It's like, is this happening? This is going to happen? This is happening. It's going to happen. Let's do it.
Yeah. That was, I think that was honestly probably the last really significant moment that I remember. My dad was at the game and I was there too. So that's a special memory, that fight.
He didn't score a goal that night too, did he? Or was it just
no?
That was 2 weeks later. So he gave me another memorable moment. And I told fans, I said, dude, I have to be your publicist. I said, you make the show. You know what? You're gonna hire me to be your assistant because I've gotten more publicity off of you, and I got so many requests for interviews for Ryan Fanti. I'm like, dude, I'm already handling all your publicity, so let's make it a team.
I remember just scrolling through like Facebook reels and going, oh, that looks like a comment. And I heard your voice and that's what triggered me. Oh no, that's the Fanti fight. And like, it was just random. Like, it wasn't like the Komets posting it. It was just random like hockey sites that were just posting it. I think didn't ESPN also share it?
Yeah, it was, a couple days later, someone had mentioned to me, said, hey, ESPN in New York, and the Michael Kay show actually reached out to me and they said, hey, we're going to talk about you on the show today. And they sent me a clip. I'm like, what is going on? And it turned out, Michael Kay's the voice of the New York Yankees. So for this guy to lay praise on you, it's a pretty cool moment. And it's been viewed like something like 7 million times, It's crazy. And the other one I had was the Jacksonville thing as well, that a lot of people, so many great comments on. I had so many people, get this guy to the NHL, get, all this stuff. And that's great. Always nice to have you tires.
Yeah, that was
awesome.
That was a great call.
So have you ever received? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Shane, have you ever got a call from like a higher organization like trying to snipe you from the Komets?
No, they have not. I think it's also a situation where I pretty much have got the reputation as I'm not going anywhere. So, I'm like I said, I will be here until I can't do it anymore, and, thanks to James's dad, thanks to Michael, he set me up so well. I have no reason to go anywhere else. So, it's thanks, but no thanks. I appreciate the phone call, and thanks for thinking about me. But you know what? I'm not going to be treated any better than I am in Fort Wayne. You know what? This is my town. It's my team. And like I said, if I wanted to go somewhere, I could have done it when I was a lot younger, but I didn't want to because it never would have felt right.
Yeah. What sports franchises have reached out to you? Was it mostly ECHL?
No one has actually. No, my phone has never rang. I mean, back in the day, I had put up, obviously, sending feelers out. The San Antonio Rampage were interested to me like way back when they were back in the AHL. But outside of me just reaching out and having a few, little nibbles here and there, but at the end of the day, it was, what, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what I'm doing. So I actually had stopped many years ago trying to move on.
Well, we're glad to have you in Fort Wayne, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's listening on the radio or watching it on watching it online, it's definitely one of the best ones out there.
Thanks, guys.
I can't listen to anybody else when I've watched a game on Flow. I have to swap it back over.
Yeah, no, I'm always switching to you.
I mean, and the fact that they put your broadcast in the halls of the Coliseum is great because, like, I mean, I've gone and gotten a drink and have not missed some of the great moments because I've gotten to listen to you call it on the radio.
Yeah, no, it's it's really kind of weird that when I was a kid, they pumped Bob throughout the arena too. So
yep.
I'll play an interview or a podcast episode during the intermissions, and I'll run to the restroom and I'll hear my voice, and it's like, wow, it's still surreal even after all these years.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
No, go ahead, Colin.
Okay. So I've always wanted to ask this. Do you come up with the player nicknames sometimes when you get excited?
I do. Yeah. Sometimes I do. I've Jack Gordiak, I started calling him Flash because he's the fastest human. And that's actually Corey Milkert, our assistant coach, kept saying, hey, he's the fastest human. And I'm like, he's a Flash. He's it's pretty simple as can be. And then, going back to the wrestling days, Jack Dugan is Cactus Jack. Come on, he flipped the switch.
Oh yeah.
He goes from Mankind to Cactus Jack, and I actually had a fan point that out to me at the end of last season. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was so mad that I didn't think of it on my own. I was like, I could have been calling Cactus Jack this whole time. so at that point, I'm like, if he comes back, he's Cactus Jack.
I think one of the most popular nicknames that just keeps coming back to my head is when Alan Lasarchek scored that overtime goal and you called him the Polish Prince.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of compliments on the Polish Prince. Yep.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
That was great. So if what other sports are you interested besides hockey and clearly wrestling as well? Are there any other sports that pique your interest?
You know what? When I was growing up, I was a baseball fanatic. I actually thought baseball was where I was going to be. But I spent a season working for the Wizards.
Oh.
Back in 95 or 96 in that area. And I realized how horrible it was going to be because it's like, wow, this is every day. This is every day during the summer, when you want to be doing other things, not related to work. You want to have a Saturday night off in the summertime, I don't care if I have a Saturday night off in the middle of January.
Right.
It's horrible, So, that kind of soured me off of working in baseball. What was that one summer?
Wow. I mean, I will say this. I do love the Tin Caps logo, but the Wizards, the original Wayne the Wizard with the baseball in his hand, by far one of my favorite baseball logos ever. Going back to the when the Komets won the cup, what was going through your head as they were getting ready to drop that last that last puck drop there in the corner in the defensive zone.
Yeah.
I know what was going through mine, and everybody was just wanting the ref to drop the dang puck. But what was going through your mind as you realized like we were like that close to closing it right there at home?
I was so mad because we took an icing call, and it's like it was going to be the flow of it was going to be great. You know, the game was going to go on. I was going to say whatever I was going to say, but now you got an icing call, and now you got to drop the puck, and it's like 3 seconds. And it's like, I was mad. It's like, it kind of took away from the flow of the call, having that icing and having to reset and then drop the puck for just those 3 seconds. But my main focus was there. It's like, once it hit zeros, really not to say anything, let it breathe for a few seconds, kind of let the crowd noise, and then go in and talk, kind of absorb that moment, even for myself, just kind of taking it all in because, you know, I've been with the club almost 30 years. I've been there for several championships, and we're able to celebrate with everyone and do all that stuff, but never as the full-time broadcaster. So this was kind of a special moment and an emotional moment as well for me. And I wanted to take it in for a second before I said a word. Because I know this was going to be replayed, you know, forever. You know, you win a championship, that's the call. So I didn't prepare anything because you don't want to do that because you want it to be organic. Right. My only regret is that after I said it, you know, I said for the 10th time in franchise history, the Komets are champs. And I was going to say the 10th time the Komets are kings. And I'm like, I should have said kings. It would have been better.
It's all right. It's all right. I remember listening, like going back and listening to it, clips of that. I was there. Ryan, Colin, were you guys there? I don't remember.
I was at one of the home playoff games against the Stingrays, but I wasn't at the championship one. I watched hockey.
I was at the final. I was at that game with Zach Shutt. So happy birthday, Zach Shutt! By the way,
happy birthday, Zach.
It's Zach Shutt's birthday, February 13th. No, but I was at that game, and we were sitting up in the we're up in the club section, and it was wild up there. It was 10,000 people, and everyone's going crazy. It was an awesome time.
I was sitting about 7 rows up, still in the lower bowl, like from the halfway point. So 7 rows in that top section of the lower bowl, right in line with the face-off circles in the defensive zone there in the third period, and getting to watch the pandemonium of the team piling up on each other. I'll never forget that. Then looking down on the ice and seeing my good buddy James standing there on the ice was also pretty cool. That was a great moment, and that'll forever be one of my favorite minor league sports moments, because you always dream of being in the building when your team wins a championship, and to get to live out that one was really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what kind of schooling did you go through? Was it just the school of Bob Chase that got you through this? Did you go?
No, I'm a proud college dropout. Okay. So this is show business. It really has nothing to do with what school you went to or anything like that. If you're good, you're good. So it's funny because I didn't even know I graduated high school in 1992. I didn't think that it was even possible. It's like, you go to school for this? This is actually a thing. You can go to college to learn to be a play-by-play man. It's like, I just thought it was something you just did. So no, I started doing hockey games when I was in high school on public access television. Shows you how old I am. So I just learned, listen to other broadcasters, listen to Bob, and just went from there. Because it's funny, it's like, because now a lot of young broadcasters come and ask me to critique them, and they talk to me, and these kids now in the league, are, they could be my kids because they're in their early 20s, mid 20s, and, so they've gone to college, they've got all this, and they asked me the same thing. And I'm like, no, dude, I didn't have to do anything. I said, it's just, it's just show business. And they come out of college and they're kind of, bright-eyed, and they don't realize that, this is show business, and it is a little bit different than what they taught you in college. They just kind of taught you to prepare in college, not really how to tell the story or how to call a game or how to know your audience. That's the most important thing that I tell the younger guys. Know your audience, man. Know who your fans are. Know what they need to know. If they're knowledgeable, make sure you make them like they are knowledgeable. And if they are new to the game, make sure you're teaching them the game. But make sure you tell them what they want to hear. They don't want to hear you giving praise to your team all the time. You really can't go down the middle. You got to be a homer. You're
Right.
I've got a few teams like, Indianapolis or Indy, they don't travel their broadcaster. Andrew Smith's a great guy, but he doesn't do road games. So they're forced to listen to the road broadcaster. And, us road broadcasters, the fans will pile on us. I'm not just the only one. There's a lot of other guys too. But it's like, hey, man, you know what? We're not working Indy Fuel. we're trying to make our audience, the Fort Wayne Komet hockey audience, happy.
Right. I mean, and that's really cool. I didn't know that about you. So how did you get connected with Bob? Did you do what Doc did and just like send him a letter or like reach out to him like that?
No, I would actually go up when I started doing games when I was in high school. Actually, I think it was my dad. I think my dad went up because my dad held court at Komet games for years, and my dad never met a stranger. He was always, everyone just knew my dad as a guy who just was always at hockey games. And you know what? One day Bob was just walking by and he said, "Hey, Bob," and started talking to Bob. "This is my son. He wants to be just like you." And that was it. I was like 17 years old. And, I talked to Bob from that day forward, and that's really how it started. And then later on in my early 20s, I get to know James's dad really well. And that's how it really started. So, that I can't really say I had a big break because I had about a dozen big breaks, but a lot of it is just, it's not all talent. A lot of it is just timing and pure luck and pure happenstance. Because, if I don't have a random meeting with James's dad one day, just a pure meeting, just him and I meeting, this may not happen. So yeah, a lot of it is just luck.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cause like, I know Doc Emmerich talked about Bob doing a lot of the mentoring for him too. And he just kind of reached out and wrote a letter one day, and the rest is history. But that's really awesome that you like those circumstances happened and that those, luck played out like that. Cause like we've said multiple times, all of us here, we couldn't imagine anybody else taking over for him. But when players, do you get special like connections with players and stuff like that? And how does that affect when they leave? How hard is that when you have to call their name for another team?
Yeah. I'm obviously in my 50s, so there's not a whole lot of guys that I get connected with because I'm the old man in the room. No one wants to hang out with an old man. So. But no, I mean, there's a lot of guys who go for other teams, and it's like, I gotta, I give them respect. Like Brandon Hawkins right now, who is absolutely murders us, but he's one of the most beautiful human beings ever want to meet. Everyone,
wonderful guy, wonderful guy.
I can't hate on Hawk at all, even though he rips my heart out every other game. So. And still to this day, when he scores, I always say, it's like, well, it's our good friend Brandon Hawkins. And I mean it because he is our friend. And I remember the first game he played against us in Toledo, his mom listened to me and was kind of interested in what I would say. And I was so nice and like, oh, that's our friend Brandon Hawkins again. And I truly do mean that. And a couple years ago when he actually pulled the old lacrosse goal against us in Toledo. And I'd seen him do it so many times in practice when he was with us. He never did it in a game, but in my head, I'm like, oh, when he does this, I'm going to have a great call. And I have it loaded in my head, this is going to happen. And then I see the play materialize in Toledo, and I'm like, he's going to do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, Hawk. And he did it. And of course, I couldn't call it like I wanted to call it. But after the game, I made sure to text him, send him a very mean text. I'm like, I waited how many months to do that? and you do it against us. What is that?
Always against
That's
but
It was against
when sorry, what?
I was against Mario Kalina was our goaltender that night. So yeah, I remember that very well. And then Sean Sadlowski, we were together from the very beginning, so I consider Sean a friend, so that's his last game. We all knew that was going to be it, last year. And, I got to say, I got a little emotional there at the end of the game. I didn't think I would, but I did, because Sean and I had been together since his very first day as a Komet, and he'd been there for 10 years. And I got a little emotional there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were doing a lot of the road games at that time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I had started, Bob was slowing down, and I started doing the road games, right as soon as I started kind of do color with them too. So it was that next year. So, I remember Sid playing his first game. It was on the road in Las Vegas. And I think that may have been, that was the first game that I had actually called solo on the road, was a game out in Las Vegas. And that was Sid's first game. So It was cool.
So we were,
Oh no.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, guys.
Do you remember calling your first game with Bob? Could you give us a little more detail about that?
Yeah, I was up in Kalamazoo. It was it was surreal. It was really cool. It was we had a great time together. At that point, of course, we had known each other for a very, very long time. So it was very natural. And, we just had a good time going up to Kalamazoo. It was, both one of our favorite barns, so we were able to share just Kalamazoo stories and just call the game, just like two guys who had been doing it for years, so it was, it was lovely.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. What is one of your least favorite things about the job?
Well, the travel, as I'm getting older, the 3 games in 3 nights, it's a little bit better this year because the ECHL has kind of shied away from doing the 3 games in 3 nights in 3 different cities. That was crazy, but still 3 games in 3 nights in less than 72 hours most of the time. And then, next week we play on a Wednesday, then we've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. By the time I'm done with the game on Sunday, I'm wiped out. So like a lot of people also don't understand, there's a lot of other things I'm doing leading up to the game. So it's a full 10 to 12 hour day sometimes on game days. So you string like 4 of those together, 4 and 5 nights. Yeah, it takes me a couple days to recover after we get done.
Yeah.
Have you ever lost your voice after a game before?
I've lost my voice during games. That has happened. Well, that happened last year, and I had to call in relief. Fiona had to come in and then call that game, and she got all these viral moments, and she got a lot of attention, and it was great. I was so happy. I was upset that I actually missed the game, but so happy that she was able to do that and brought a lot of attention to the Fort Wayne Komets.
Yeah, a lot of posts on sites on like Facebook and stuff like that about that.
That was
That's
awesome.
called a goalie fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was I was well enough to at least to do color with her. I couldn't do the full game because my voice was gone, but I wanted to make sure I was next to her. Well, in case she had any technical difficulty, because it was a road game, and just kind of, because she was obviously nervous. I mean, she's just a kid doing this, and the goalie fight started, and I immediately wanted to take over, and I had to stop myself. I'm like, hey, shut up. This isn't your moment, Jonas. And then at the end of it, I'm like, okay, I waited 30 years for a goalie fight. You got one your first night. That is some.
Yeah. That's good. Can you give us a breakdown of like your normal day of a game, like your 10-hour to 12-hour day? Like what happens?
I also do a lot of sales for the club too. So a lot of times I'm dealing.
I was going to say, I don't think everybody realizes that Shane is a day-to-day guy for the Komets too. He just doesn't do the broadcast. He does a lot more.
Yeah, during the season, I'm pretty much working 7 days a week. There really isn't a day where I'm not doing something for the team. So, a game day, I'm initially, I've got to get game notes to the opposing broadcaster, if it's a home game. So I'm doing that in the morning. And if we have any roster changes, I'm doing that with the league and putting everything that way. And then if I got clients or whatever, if I have to do my, normal printing of game day notes for the press and everything. So, I'm in the office maybe noon, maybe a little bit later than that. So then I'm going to head over to the rink and set everything up, talk to the coaches, get lineups, do whatever I need to do there, set my equipment up. Now that we've got a new radio station, I'm more involved with the technical aspect with XKE and the board ops and scheduling the board ops and making sure they have everything they need and make sure all the commercials for the broadcasts are ready to go. You also got to coordinate with Flow Sports and make sure everything is tested and everything is working. And then by that time, I'm usually exhausted and we're going to talk. I got a game to call and I'm tired.
Yeah. For sure.
Magical cups of coffee will get you through the night.
Oh, it does. I'm much just. I have actually Fiona brought up a 1-cup coffee maker up in the press box that we hide, that we keep up there in case we need it. That we go ahead and emergency cup of coffee is there when the game starts.
Nice.
Gotta hide it.
Do you watch any of the other teams, like, to kind of prepare and kind of like so you know what to expect from the other teams?
Not really, because again, I do so much other stuff. I just don't. Sometimes I don't have the time, and then plus when you're doing 3 games in 3 nights, again, you don't have the time to do any of that stuff. You kind of just have to rely on the other broadcaster. You ask them questions. And also in this league, it's called the ever-changing hockey league for a reason. That you may play this team on Friday and you're going to see them a week later and it's going to be a totally different team. Everything you did prior to that was thrown out the window.
Right.
Take this weekend, we're going to play Cincinnati. They've had so many changes. We had a lot of changes this week. So neither team, even though we played each other 5 or 6 times, it's going to be like playing each other for the first time on tomorrow night. So,
right.
So a lot of times preparation goes out the window, and that's upsetting because you've done a lot of work and it's like, wow, why did I do any of this? Because everything changed.
Right.
Well,
right.
We finally have an abbreviation for the ECHL again.
Yeah.
Or what it actually stands for.
That's a joke between us and the broadcasters that, you really can't prepare a whole lot.
I bet you're excited to call Matt Murphy in the lineup again.
Yeah, it's great. I visited with Murph when he was in Cincinnati, and I know he wanted to come back to Fort Wayne. He wanted to make it happen. We finally were able to make it happen. To have a guy from that team, from that championship team, come back is always great, and I'm looking forward to seeing him finally in the right uniform.
Yeah, same thing with Petrozelli too. I'm really glad they brought him back as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, PD, he's one of us, he's another guy, just like Sid, when the day comes, I've been there since day one for PD. I remember meeting PD for the first time. He was fresh out of college. He met us in Indianapolis. I met him in the hotel, just fresh out of college. I remember calling his first game. So I've called every game that he's been involved with the Komets, and, day's going to come where PD will hang it up and I'll probably get just as emotional with him.
Yep. I remember going to Cincinnati for a playoff game, and I was there when he scored his first playoff goal for the Komets.
Yeah. I remember his first game, and I've always enjoyed watching PD play. Another good guy who we joke around with. I'm actually, good friends with his dad, and that's also funny. It's like, I'm to the age where it's like I want to hang out with your dads, So
Yes.
No. So how hard is it when you disagree with a call? How hard is it to not let that come through the broadcast?
Yeah, I've had, we all do. We all got reminded to reel it in. I'm surprised I've not gotten fined. There was actually one time, James, I don't know if you know this, but there was a time where we were playing we were playing Wichita, and it was during the COVID year, and it was we played them in the regular season. It was a really, really good game, and we knew we were going to play in the playoffs. It was going to be a great playoff series. And Wichita, they still have a guy by the name of Jay Dickman, who is a great, great player. And he got mixed up in some things, and it was on the tip of my tongue. And I said, well, it didn't come out of my mouth, but there's Dickman living up to his name again. And I told that to your old man, James, and your dad said, I would have paid your fine, Shane, if that would have came out of your mouth.
Hey, really? No, he never told me about that, but that's funny. I could totally see that. I gotta remember, as much as I'm a homer. I mean, I also have got to remember that it's minor league hockey. The referees, they're starting up too. They're just like the players. So I've gotten a little bit better over the years. Just when something is over the top, egregiously bad, I've got to say something. A lot of times, in the moment, I wouldn't have called that, but I'm not the one calling it. But a bad call is a bad call, and I'm gonna call it out.
Yeah,
it's like how we used to do with the Mad Ant Drumline.
Yeah, we politely disagree with you, Mr. Referee. Which,
yeah.
Oh, goodness. You should have come to some of the Mad Ants game, Shanes, because Dylan has gotten 2 NBA G League players fined, as well as a assistant coach to break a clipboard. So
nice. I've heard the stories.
There are the clipboard one is my favorite because it was Canton Charge was up by 34 points in the third quarter, and we came back and won, and Dylan just kept giving it to him. The line was right next to the opposing bench, and that was very strategic by the front office to put us there. And Dylan just kept giving them the riot act, and finally he just turns around and takes the clipboard and breaks it over his knee, and papers go flying, and he goes, "That's not very mature."
That's minor league sports, and I absolutely love stories like that. I don't care what sport or where you are. That is great. That is minor league sports. So when we have stories like that, anywhere, any building, I'm like, there's something very romantic about minor league sports, especially minor league hockey. So, and I've, people have asked me, just like you said, hey, if the NHL called, would you take the job? And I'm like, I wouldn't, because to be honest with you, it would cease being fun. I'm like, you get to the NHL, it's corporate, it's kind of, they're hanging on every word. You're going to get, criticized for everything you say. And if you say anything remotely, whatever, you're going to get dinged for it. But I'm like, this is minor league hockey. It's still the wild, wild west in some regards. And it's so romantic. I just love minor league sports. And especially, again, minor league hockey, again, is something special. Especially, I grew up in it, obviously, back in the early 80s, when it really was crazy. It's just it's a different atmosphere. And so I'm like, the NHL is great. I've got friends, obviously, who have gone up to the NHL and are in the NHL right now. And it's like, I'm so happy for them. But I'm like, man, I couldn't do it because it just would cease being fun. And that's what's also part of my job. It's like, people say, wow, Shane, it seems like you're having fun. I'm like, because I am. I'm like, it's the greatest thing ever. I'm just going out there being myself and having fun, because if I'm not having fun, I'm not entertaining, and it's going to come through on the call, and people are going to know I'm not authentic. I'm just out there, I'm just calling the game. I'm like, well, I don't want to be that. I'm a fan just like you guys. I'm living and dying just like with you guys in the stands. There's no difference. Again, I'm just the guy they gave me a microphone. How stupid is that? Who did that?
Do you have any stories like that of fun rowdiness that where the other team's gotten riled up? I know from where you're at, it might not be as easy, but any stories that you've seen or anything like that?
Just really, more of unruly fans than anything else. You see that everywhere. I remember that those games in Wichita, we were playing in the practice rink, and the fans were right on top of our guys. And the first game, it was actually, you heard some of the things they were saying, and it was actually funny. A lot. I mean, it's like, all right, that was a good chirp. And even our guys were like, all right, that was funny,
Mhm.
But then the next night, I remember it just got sinister. And it's like, all right, this isn't fun anymore. It's like there's been some lines crossed here. But obviously, we get trolled a lot. If we're in an opposing building, we're down. They're going to play Welcome to the Jungle in the third period. That's going to happen. So, and again, it's minor league hockey. It's all in good fun. Hopefully it is. Some people do take it a little further, but it's in good fun. And that's what, that's what I say on my call a lot of times. If I'm ever criticized for something I said, I'm like, dude, it's heroes and villains. I'm like, right now you're the villain, and I gotta have that guy. You gotta be the bad guy. It's nothing personal, but I gotta have that guy.
Yeah. Colin and I and another friend were in Indy the year before the Cup. So it was the year that they shut everything down. It was in Indy, like almost right directly before that. And we had beaten Indy pretty bad. And we were sitting out in the hallway, or I was sitting out in the hallway where they went to the bathroom at the end of the game. And there was a mom with a Komet shirt on holding her daughter with a Komet shirt, but the dad had a Fuel jersey on. So it was a house divided. And the mom is sitting there and goes, Daddy's upset because he picked the wrong team. And the daughter looks at her dad and goes, hey, guess what? Your goalie. The dad just was so
That's great.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about like the rowdiness. One thing, Shang, you would remember. I wish I could have, but I was too young. The Toledo Sports Arena. I wish I could have gone there. I've heard some pretty wild stories about that place. You got any wild stories?
That was a special place. Went there times when I was a kid, and it's so funny that Fort Wayne, Toledo, they hate each other, and how it's generational. How this hatred goes back. You taught the hatred to your kids, And if you go to the Huntington Center now, it's a rowdy environment, but nothing like it used to be in the sports arena. I mean, I was pretty young too, but I just remember, I got educational purposes, the names and words that I learned, as a 10-year-old. I remember those. So
I think it's crazy that like our generation, people like Shane, you were mentioning that iconic arena. We didn't get to experience that Toledo rivalry until the Komets went to the ECHL.
Yeah, I was a kid, and it was pretty. I mean, back in the '80s, it was pretty vicious. But I would always ask even the old timer guys, the Eddie Longs, Len Thornsons, Teddy Wrights, the guys who I sat down and talked with who played in the 50s and 60s, and I'm like, was it always like that? And they're like, yeah, because it was probably worse. Actually, Bob tells me the story. The only time a fan ever took a swing at him was in Toledo.
Man.
There was a story I heard. There was a story I heard from my dad and my uncle where I can't remember what name they were going by. I think it was the Toledo Gold Diggers.
Yeah, it was the Gold Diggers. Yep.
And I heard somebody from Toledo took their stick, reached it over the glass, and hit somebody in the face with it.
Not surprising. Actually, Matt Geffrick told me a great story when he worked for Port Huron. He was the Port Huron broadcaster in the early 70s. And the security came up to him and said, hey, we don't know where this guy is, but there's a guy out in the stands with a pellet gun. So he's probably going to take some shots at you. So you want to maybe kind of be on the edge. It's like, what are you talking? A pellet gun?
Ow. Ow.
That's awesome.
I didn't realize how strong this rivalry was until the story right now.
Oh yeah, you go back and you talk to the, I actually, Wayne Bishop, one of my heroes when I was a kid. I remember I got to interview Wayne, and I talked to him, and it's like, I remember when, back in the early '80s, we played Toledo and it was vicious, and he was like, yeah, it's always been that way, and it's great because it's one of. It's a rivalry, one of the best. It's probably the best rivalry in all of minor league sports, and a lot of people don't know it. And if any of you guys are would be documentarians, I mean, to do a story about Fort Wayne Toledo would be great. It's just it really is. It is the Ohio State, Michigan of minor league hockey, and it's a shame the rivalry took a pause for close to 30 years. But literally, when we started playing Toledo again after a 3-decade break, it just started right up. I mean, it was like no time had passed.
It's like the players already knew what had to happen.
Yeah, and and both teams, when new players come in, they're educated. It's like, we do not like these guys. They don't like us. Jesse Kalicki, who came in, who wasn't part of the Komets. It's the first Komet coach that we brought from outside of the family in quite some time. His first day on the job, we're telling him, we don't like Toledo. Make sure we don't lose to Toledo.
Well, that's bled over to the APHL for the Distillers. The Distillers in Toledo and Mobsters, they hate each other too. Like the penalty minute count in those games is huge for fighting. Like, I mean, I've seen a couple of the games, and it feels like a Komets walleye game.
Oh yeah, no, it transcends sports. I know when there's been a few times where Fort Wayne high school football teams have gone over and played teams from Toledo and vice versa. And I don't know what it is, but it's something ingrained in the DNA of the folks in both cities that Toledo and Fort Wayne just simply do not like each other.
One of my favorite years of watching the Komets in Toledo is during the finals run, the conference finals, lost to Colorado. That team beat Toledo 9 times out of 10 the entire year, and it was great.
We haven't had a whole lot of luck against these guys since joining the ECHL, but when you're able to beat them in the playoffs, and that was a funny year because we brought in Michael Hauser. We Pat Nagel, who had been a great goaltender, but just hadn't got it done in the playoffs. And ironically, he went to play for Toledo, the year after. Yeah. But we brought in Michael Hauser for a reason, because Michael Hauser in his career was a Toledo killer. It's like, we needed a guy who knew how to beat Toledo, and that's what he did.
That's when we had Gabriel Desjardins and Garrett Thompson. They were really great against that team.
Should have won that year. We should have won that year.
We should have. And Jordan Binkley too. Shout out.
Yeah, no, that was we would have won it that year. I think in 2016, we went to the conference final against Allen. We would have won it. If we had, a couple of bad mistakes early on in the series cost us, and we would have played Wheeling in the finals, and we would have rolled.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Wheeling, they're doing absolutely great this year.
They got a lot of help from Pittsburgh, but they lost a couple guys to Europe. A couple guys to the AHL, mainly their goaltender. So they've actually come down to earth a little bit here over the last month. But still, they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Penguins need to call that goalie up.
They did. Actually, he's up. He's in the AHL right now. But
I mean, the NHL.
Come playoff time, that he is not back in a Wheeling uniform.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are running out of time. But Shane, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. Before we wrap up, do you have anything you want to say to our listeners, or any advice to anybody wanting to do what you want to do, or anything like that?
My advice is always never turn down a gig, because that's what I did. That's how I got noticed. I sacrificed a lot of time, like in my early 20s, when I should have been having more fun. But when anyone would call for me to run a camera, run a board, call a game, no matter what it was, I never said no. And it just would get to a point where, just call Shane. Shane will do it. So that's my advice, is that you got to sacrifice. It's show business. It's no different as if you're making movies, making music, making, plays, TV, it's show business. So, kind of don't think that, sports is any different than that. It's not, because it's all entertainment. So you kind of have to have that mindset.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Shane. We'd love to have you back on, because I'm sure there's way more we can talk. But in the meantime, Colin, what do we say?
I think I'm actually going to let Shane do his iconic send off after hockey game. That's okay.
Do it.
Do it. Do it.
What do I say? I've been your play-by-play broadcaster, Shane Alberani, and you've been listening to Komet Hockey on 96.3 XKE.
Let's go.
All right.
Nice.
Have a good night, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
See you, good night.
Yep, thanks.